Hey, welcome everybody to a brand new episode of IDTALK4ED Live, the show for the unsung heroes of education. I'm your host, Sarfo-Mensah. If this is your first time tuning in to the podcast, we welcome you. We hope that you come back for future episodes and new content. And if you're a returning viewer or listener of the podcast, we welcome you back, and we hope that today's episode is one that is informative, enlightening, and inspiring for you. So today's episode is one that is very special. We have a very special guest, a living legend, somebody who I consider a North Star in terms of what it means to be a Black educator, specifically a Black male educator in the profession. I've had the honor of being in the same space as him in different functions and events, more specifically through the annual Black Educator Rock events, and I've had a chance to really learn a lot from him during those engagements, but also from afar. And he is somebody who, when you think about what it means to be in school leadership, he is the first person whose name comes up, in my opinion, just one of the greatest to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and just share a little bit of the resume. I can't share the whole thing because that's going to take the whole show. But what we have here is someone who is an award-winning school leadership expert, a best-selling author who's about to drop his 12th book, and we're going to get into that a little bit later. He's a keynote speaker, a National Alliance of Black School Educators Hall of Fame Award recipient, and just a whole number of accolades, which we don't have enough time to share. But I'm just excited to have this conversation with them. So without further ado, I want to bring on Mr. Baruti Kafele onto the podcast to talk with us. How we doing, sir?
All right, I'm on fire. Great to be here with you.
Yes, sir. Great to be here as well. And first off, before we get into the conversation, I just want to salute you. 55 weeks of doing that virtual assistant principal leadership academy.
Yeah.
I'm 55 weeks and you were consistent all throughout that past year. So tell me how you feeling after that whole experience, because I know you're somebody who's used to traveling in the air and going to different states and cities. So what was that experience like for you?
I love it. And we just did week 56 about 2 hours ago. And, it's just a great thing where I can get on here in addition to the work I do during the week and just kind of let my hair down, if you will, and just be me, without having to be concerned about client expectations, right? Just be me. If I want to laugh out loud, if I want to yell, if I want to speak in broken English, use slang, whatever it is. It's just in just bringing this information to assistant principals and the various other capacities that watch, because quite frankly, it's not just APs that tune in, it's people from all genres of education, but also people from outside of education that tune in. So just spending that hour and just delivering that information. And that's inclusive of the time it takes me to prepare, because for something that I don't do for a fee, I spend a lot of time during the week just preparing, so that I can put forth the best possible product for the folks that tune in every week or watch it on YouTube.
And I know it's been very impactful for so many people. I actually had my good brother, Mr. Amen Ra, out in Compton.
Yeah,
he was on my show a few months ago, and I asked him, man, what's a book that really impacted you and your development as an educator? And he said, Principal Kafele's Closing the Attitude Gap was the book for me. That was the game changer. Wow. And those were his words.
Wow. I'm honored by that. Yeah. I just wrote him something. Did I write a forward or a blurb for his newest book? I think I wrote a blurb for his book. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I'm honored by that. That matters.
Yeah, that's my brother, Amen Ra. So if you don't have Revolutionary School Culture, his book, that's another book that you have to have in the library. Yeah. But But let's get to you. I know your story pretty well, just being around you. But for those who don't know, I know you a Jersey native, proud Jersey native.
Yeah.
But just talk to me about your upbringing in Jersey and what ultimately brought you into the education field.
Yeah, we all have a story, and I tell mine because it tends to inspire those that they're trying to get from point A to point B. So here's me as an example, because a lot of times people see your, I don't want to call it finished product, but they see you as you are. So a lot of times there's some assumptions there that I guess life was kind of cool for them and all that. But I'm a 5-year high school student. I was a good student in elementary and middle, but in middle I had some issues that were going on, and it forced my wheels to fall off. So I ultimately spent 5 years in high school attending 4 different schools with my mom trying to save her son from himself, and graduated with a 1.5 GPA. So really did nothing while I was there. I was invisible. I didn't realize that until I became a principal and reflected back on it, that no one really saw me anyway. So after graduating, I spent another 5 years pretty much doing nothing, just hanging out. And at the age of 23 and looking at some of the people I grew up with graduating from college and getting on with their lives, I said, well, I need to do something. So I decided, I said to my mom, I'm gonna go to college. And I went to college, undergrad school here in Jersey, Kane University, and doubled up, tripled up on the workload, and graduated summa cum laude in 2 years. And the rest is history. But a lot of times people ask me, like, how did you make that shift? Because, based on what you said prior to college, you were in bad shape. And I said, well, when I got to the school, I stumbled on a book the first day of school. I went to the school library because I figured that's where the smart people hang out. So I need to hang out with them. So went to the school library and walked up and down the aisles, and there was a book that was partially protruding on the shelf. So I said, there's my book. I couldn't see the title or anything. I just saw the book on the shelf, and I grabbed it, and it's called To Kill a Black Man, a book written about the parallels of the lives of Dr. King and Malcolm X. And I didn't plan to read this. It was just there. So I pull it off the shelf and I sit down and begin to read, and I'm intrigued, I'm inspired, and I can't wait to get to class and get back and continue to read it. So I read it in about 2 or 3 days. And once I finished that book, I had transformed, because I was introduced to these 2 Black men that I really knew nothing about. I knew they existed. I could give you maybe 2 sentences on King and 1 inaccurate sentence on Malcolm. So I really didn't know them. But once I read this book, I said, wow, there's my first real life example of Black men. I want to do something. I don't want to be them, but I want to do something that's going to make an impact. So that led me to education, and the rest is history. I've been walking down this very narrow education path since 1988. And here I am in 2021, and I'm still on fire doing this work.
Right. And that's just one book, but just knowing your story and how you became Principal Kafele.
Yeah.
I know that in this current day, there's a lot of talk about culturally relevant instruction, anti-racist pedagogy, and the scholarship goes back. I mean, you could trace it back to even OGs like Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings and even Dr. Geneva Gay, Dr. Beverly Daniel Tatum, and the list goes on and on. Yeah. But we've seen the lexicon and the terminology change over the years.
Yeah.
But yet we're still talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
We're talking about anti-racism. So what I want to know from you is, in your opinion, in the Black cultural context, what should culturally relevant and anti-racist pedagogy look like within our schools? Because I know that's something that you've been very vocal about over the years.
Yeah. And with those 3 women, those 3 OGs that you name, I referenced the 3 of them in the new book, along with Dr. Lisa Delpit. Because when you think about culturally relevant practices and culturally responsive practices, those are the 4 gurus for me, and they just happen to be Black women. But in terms of me in that space, After reading the one book, I became this voracious reader of everything. There was a bookstore here in the New York City area. I'm in Jersey, but right across the river, called Liberation Bookstore, which was up in Harlem. And I lived in that store during my undergrad days and beyond. Every weekend, the owner, Miss Una Mozak, she could count on me being in that store buying up some books. So I was reading several books at a time, and you know, I say to educators all the time, think about it. I said, here I am in undergrad school studying marketing, right? Studying marketing, not education. But once I'm finished studying the books or going to class, I'm reading all this African American, African continental African, African Caribbean, African diaspora. I'm reading all this history. So when I become a teacher, think about it. All I know in life is marketing with my degree, and African American, African history. We'll just call it African history because it was beyond continental America, continental USA. So all I know is that. So for me to go into a classroom, I don't know any better than to take all that information and infuse it into mathematics, infuse it into science, social studies, language arts, because I don't know better. Right now, if I was taught correctly, then that would still be the thing to do. But because this head only knew history and marketing, I said, well, I'm just going to go with what I know. And come to find out, it made sense. So young people are achieving. I stay in New York because I was in Brooklyn for the 1 year, come back to Jersey home and get certified here. In a very short period of time, they named me as the school teacher of the year, the district teacher of the year, the county teacher of the year, and New Jersey State finalist teacher of the year. So the question from a lot of folks was like, how is this possible? We remember you just a few short years ago, and you just became a teacher. You haven't been doing it long. How are you recognized as one of the best in the state of New Jersey? And I said, very simple. Because I was doing something different from a lot of people. I was putting the children on the pages. I was putting the children in the lessons so that it became relatable, so that they could identify with it, so that they could embrace it, so that they could take it with them, because it was relevant. It was culturally relevant. And this teacher was using a culturally responsive approach to connecting with them. So in other words, it's being very normal. But in the education world, it's something that has to be taught and trained. But for me, it was just let me be my Black self and let me make sure that what they're being exposed to is something that they can see themselves as Black children as we make the learning relevant. We're not going to rewrite curriculum. Like I always say, and I got this sheet of paper, and I'm going to shut my mouth in a second. I say to my audiences as I sit right at this computer, I said, this is representative of a curriculum. Here it is, curriculum. It's a dead document. But the master teacher goes like this. The master teacher breathes life into it. See, so the master teacher doesn't run around complaining, oh, the curriculum doesn't have this and it doesn't have that. I can't be culturally relevant because this is not there. The master teacher knows this, is going to teach this, but is going to go above this and ensure that I'm speaking to the students that are assigned to this school and assigned to this classroom, given who they are. And that's the difference for me.
And doesn't it reinforce the fact that teaching in itself is an art form? And I think that's what gets lost in so many of our teacher prep programs.
Yeah.
You know, we come in, we focus so much on curriculum. We focus so much on Common Core, testing, assessments. But a lot of the teachers come out not knowing who they want to be in that classroom space.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it takes so long for teachers to get acclimated to that space, and also to stay in the field, because they don't have the stamina, because they haven't figured out who they are within that space. And I think that's what leads to so much turnover in so many of our schools, where so many of our Black and brown children are.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with you, because what you're speaking to is that classroom teacher identity. I often speak about leadership identity and the challenge in that, and particularly if it's a school that's populated with Black and brown children and the teacher is not. Here's the challenge. We used this language last year of the bubble with the NBA. They played in the bubble in Orlando to keep the virus from coming in. Well, children grow up in their own bubble. And in so many cases, just based on the demographic, the teacher demographic in schools across the country, many teachers grow up in a bubble that is miles away from the bubble that the children grow up in. But the school is typically in the same community as the bubble that the young people are growing up in. Teachers way down the highway, miles away, another part of a state, and all that kind of thing. And now they come into a school and they're working with children that, in terms of who those children are racially, ethnically, and culturally, many of them do not have prior relationship with people who look like these children. So I will ask the teacher during breaks, lunch breaks, when I'm on location presenting, and I say, talk to me about your intimate familiarity with people that look like the children you teach, particularly your Black and brown. And a lot of times the teacher will say to me, wow, I don't have any. So are you telling me that your initial exposure beyond pop culture, media, passing one another in the supermarket, the mall, whatever it is, you're telling me your intimate familiarity with Black people is through these children that you teach? Yes, that's a problem. So now when you talk about what you just said with identity, I could be in undergraduate school formulating philosophically who I think I'm going to be in a classroom, and then I come into a community that I'm not familiar with, and that identity that I thought I was going to bring along with me is not going to fly, because now I've got to learn the community. I've got to learn the people. I've got to learn the children. I've got to learn what equity is and how I connect with the children. I've got to learn what cultural relevance and cultural responsiveness is and how we make these connections. And now who I thought I was going to be, that's out the window. And now I've got to figure out how I can be who I need to be in order to make those connections with the youngsters who are not going to change. They shouldn't have to change. They are themselves. But teacher has to make some shifts in order for those connections to occur in that classroom.
And what you're touching on is something that has become real popular in our education circles. So there's been a lot of conversation around the idea of anti-Blackness, right? And if you read different texts, whether you're reading about Dr. April Baker Bell's just linguistic justice, right? How we have racism in terms of how we police Black language in our classrooms, or even, Dr. Jamil Lee Scott, Black Appetite, White Food. There are a lot of books out there that are speaking about this idea of anti-Blackness. So as someone that's been in the classroom, as someone that's led many schools, and we probably don't have enough time to get into it real deeply, but if you can just share with us some of the ways in which anti-Blackness manifests itself in our K-12 schools. So you could take it from a curricular standpoint, from a disciplinary standpoint, however angle you want to take it.
Yeah, it's all of the above, because since you mentioned discipline, and I always say discipline is just the manifestation of a culture that needs maximum attention. So someone could have a poor diet, for example, and you may see pimples that emerge on your body somewhere, your face, wherever it is, and it could be because of the diet, right? It could be stress. It's something that you're intaking, and then it manifests in this form of a pimple or whatever it may be. It could be something much bigger. But now, in terms of treating it, people, when they get a pimple, to stay with that example, they may go and get certain ointments and so forth and apply it to the pimple with the hope that will expedite it leaving. But that wasn't the problem. That was the manifestation of an internal problem that's much larger than the little pimple. So with discipline, always you go to schools, you go to urban schools, rural schools that have large Black and brown populations, and you see these massive disciplinary issues and all these referrals being written, but that's not the issue. There's not a discipline issue. There's a culture issue that's manifesting itself in the discipline, because culture ultimately has to be the mouthpiece. So now we've got teachers. You look at the disproportionality of Black children being sent to an office to be disciplined for whatever the reason, but that isn't the problem. So now Black children are in the office. Black children are not, or Black and brown, but in this case, Black are not learning because they're not in the classroom. And there's so many youngsters waiting down there to be seen by a dean of students or an assistant principal that it's not like they leave and they go and see this person and come back. It's like going to the doctor's office. They say, be there at 3 o'clock for your appointment, knowing you're not going to be seen until 4. So now the youngster is sent out of the office at 11 and the AP can't get to them till 12. And now you got a line full of young people being deprived of education because you've got folks in the building that don't understand how to connect with them and don't understand the power of culture being the mouthpiece, so that we don't have the discipline as the manifestation of a problem that's really not there. Right. But ultimately what you see is the disproportionality. And you just see these large numbers of Black young people suspended, detained in terms of detention, and then the underachievement that goes with it when we're talking about young people who are born brilliant, born most highly capable, can achieve anything they conceptualize. We've seen it time after time, but we see different results because we're not addressing the problems the way that we need to address them.
Wow, and that's a whole lot to have to, navigate and bring schools. A whole lot.
It's a lot there.
Right. So I'm just thinking back to your career, because I know for you, you had to battle school district officials. You had to battle probably people within your own school about just this way of teaching Black students. And getting to them, right? So I'm wondering from you, as someone that's gone through the ups and downs of advocating and fighting for Black children, young people, how can school leaders, Black school leaders and educators achieve long-term sustainability in the K-12 school system without succumbing to racial battle fatigue? Because we know that our greatest revolutionaries had to be subjected to that at some point because they're fighting so hard, for our babies. So how do you do it?
Folks have to make some real tough decisions before they come into the education space, because they have to understand going in that they're going into a system that was not designed for Black children to be successful. When this system was created, Black children were not in mind toward making this system something that was going to be productive for all children. So one has to come to grips with that. One has to be a student of history and really understand that. I tell educators all the time today, there's a lot of educators, particularly white educators, that want to understand the dynamics of today relative to race relations. And I say, look, you can read all the racism books you want, but until you read the history books, you have to understand what got us here. See, not just a critique of racism, but you got to understand what got us here in the first place. And that's the study of history. So you got to understand the 17th century, the 18th century, the 19th century, the 20th century, the 21st century. Then it will make more sense to you if you have that knowledge base. So with that said, throw that question at me one more time, because I took myself somewhere and I can't bring myself back. Give me the beginning of that question so I can answer it. I needed that bridge though.
No problem. How can Black school leaders and educators achieve long-term sustainability?
I got it. So now with that, I needed that bridge to get to that point. You have to go in there understanding that if you decide to go against the grain, there are going to be repercussions, right? I mean, it's just a given. But some of us, we got on the rose-colored glasses and we think we're going to get in there and we're going to do what it is we want to do. And it's not going to upset the apple cart. No, it's going to. And it's just a matter of how they're going to react. So when I went into the system, I made a decision as a teacher and then subsequently a principal. I'm going to go in there as myself. I'm going in there to bring about some real change for Black children. Because see, where I'm from, everybody's Black, right? So going in there to bring about some real concrete, one might say revolutionary change for Black children. So yes, I ran into issues despite all those awards, still ran into stuff, but was able to maneuver through it. But it got greater as a principal. So as a principal, just coming across supervisor, in my case, supervisor would be the superintendent. So coming across a superintendent who just wasn't feeling my approach. Previous ones were able to work with it because the bottom line, even though it was very, very African centered, it was producing the results. It was outscoring everybody, right? Not just within my district, but throughout the state. So you couldn't argue with it. Right, it was just a strategy that was very different from what was normal. So now here's a superintendent who's like, no, I'm not down with how you doing things. So now I had to fight a battle, if not a war. But here's the thing: I'll say to anybody watching this that may want to come into leadership or the classroom, but you want to be that one that goes against the grain, right? I'm saying to you, well, then you got to have allies. Right, you got to have people that have your back, and they've got your back before you get started. So I knew that I had probably every parent in that building had my back because I had the wherewithal to forge concrete, authentic relationships with them, so that when the stuff hit the fan, I knew I had a whole army. So that's on the one hand, the parents, but then on the other hand, I had a community. Right, because I made sure that I was involved in all aspects of the city. So now when it hit the fan and ultimately I was suspended, and a termination hearing was following that next week, the parents called me because it was all over the news, right? It was all the New York news media. The parents called me and they said, just stay home and chill since you suspended. We got this. Just stay home. So I watched myself on the news for the next 3 days. And then my hearing came and I spoke my mind. And the board president said, you're not speaking as one who's fighting for their job. I said, I'm not fighting for my job. I'm just here to tell you the truth of what's going on here. And the board voted unanimously 7-0 or 9-0, whatever number of board members, report back to work tomorrow. Right. So what happened was, I didn't back down, and the community and the parents didn't back down. But I got to mention this, my relationship with the students. This was a middle school. Those students marched out of that building, right? For 2 consecutive days. Day 3, the superintendent showed up with the police and said, if you even think about walking out of here, because they marched to the board. If you even think about walking out of here, you'll all be arrested. Right. So they're young, they're 11, 12, 13. They don't want to be arrested. So they went on back in the building. But I'm bringing that up to say, when you got a school and your children are fighting for you like that, then you're doing something right. Your parents are fighting for you like that. Instead of saying, hey, let them go so we can get somebody new. The community is fighting for you. The mayor's calling you. Right, the council, man, see, that's how you got to do it. You got to have people. You can't be a lone ranger in this fight. Because if you're going to try to be a lone ranger, I'm going to do this thing. I got this. Man, when they're ready to do you in, they got you. Because the superintendent said, I'm going after your license. You ain't going to lead nowhere. That's what he said to me. Right. And he had the power probably to do that.
Sure.
But he didn't know that army was back there waiting. See, that's how that works. That's how that works. So you got to position yourself, right? You can't just go on your book knowledge, right? What you got in graduate school, what you got in undergraduate school. You got to have some people knowledge too. You got to have some people skills, some practical skills, so that when the stuff does hit the fan, because when you're talking about being culturally responsive, even though it's in vogue right now, post George Floyd, it's being Black in a lot of places. It's in vogue right now, right? There's certain doors that are open that were not open before, right? So now I can go in there, like nobody was asking me to come in and talk about social justice. Now it was always on the website, but now post George Floyd, Principal Kafele, could you come in and talk about implementation of social justice education? Wow, y'all just seeing that now in 2021. It's been there since 2011, right? So, but the world has shifted. But even though it's shifted, you can still go in there in your school and ruffle somebody's feathers. And now they coming after you. You have to make sure, you have to anticipate that and therefore prepare for it so that when it happens, you all ready to go to battle. That's
yeah, but my whole thing is people are very right fragility, right? So we should be prepared. We should be prepared for that, whatever, right?
And that's not even one of the books I recommend people read.
No, I'm not, and I say that facetiously.
I know. Yeah, no, I
right.
know. Yeah.
But if you do get white fragility, and this goes back to what you said about learning about the history, whether you get a book from, Robin DiAngelo or even Dr. Ibram Kendi, go back to the notes sections. Yeah. That's the scholarship right there. That's the history that you're referring to. Yeah. They could not have written those books without referring to the scholarship. Those scholars that you talk about.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
See, I say I go old school. Lerone Bennett Jr. wrote Before the Mayflower. And I've been telling teachers, I've been telling white educators for the past year now, because they reach out to me like I want to understand what's happening. I say, well, then you got to know the story. Read Before the Mayflower, read From Slavery to Freedom by John Hope Franklin, which both books will start you in West Africa, but then give you this history. Because see, you think about it, there should not be a need for a book like this. If American history was told truthfully, you don't need a separate book. Right, it would be in the American history textbook, but we know the American history textbook has written us out of the history. It's marginalized us, it's distorted us, it's caricatured us, it's omitted us. So therefore, there's always a need for separate books to tell the story. I was talking to a group yesterday, and it's so amazing for me how, for example, we talk about being of interest to Black children. It's so interesting how anytime when I was in school, they talk about the American Revolution, and it's presented in a way that gives the impression that the soldiers on the continental side were white men fighting against white men on the British side. So I grew up with that. Then I'm 23, and I'm after reading the book To Kill a Black Man, and I'm reading all this history, and I said, wow. Anywhere from 5,000 to 9,000 of those troops on the continental side were Black, and upwards of 20,000 on the British side were Black. So you had Black men fighting in this war on both sides, and we're being taught that our people were enslaved, and they were fighting for their own independence. And we were enslaved for another 87 years, not realizing that the thousands that were promised freedom if they fought on either side, and that freedom was not attained. But it gave me a different level of appreciation for the war, knowing that Black people wanting to be free, desirous of being free, were willing to fight, to take up arms for the colony's independence from Britain. It's not taught. So hence the need for separate books to tell a story that is part of the American story, an inherent part of the American story.
And I want to get your thoughts on this, because I know right now there's a lot of states, including New Jersey, who's pushing for ethnic studies curriculum.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's been, which is great in theory, but then you kind of get into this whole conversation where you have one marginalized group saying, we're not really represented in this curriculum. We only get this section of the curriculum, but then there's some who are maybe more represented than others, right? And then you have the whole BIPOC term thrown out there, and there's all these things going on with regard to that. So I guess I'm wondering, what are your thoughts about the integration of ethnic studies, particularly at the secondary level?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, certainly I'm an advocate for children learning about the contributions, the experiences of others. But also in terms of Black people, I'm also very much mindful that we represent the only group of people in this country who came here involuntarily. See, we are uniquely American, right? Because everybody else, they came here because they wanted to come here. We had no say. So when you talk about the Native American population and the African American population, we're talking about two populations that are uniquely American. We're talking about a people here with Black people. We know our origins, our roots, but we can't pick up the phone or go on the computer and say, I'm coming home for a week, right? I'm coming home for a month, most of us anyway. So this is home for most of us, right? So I'm saying, therefore, with this very unique population of people, although I respect becoming familiar with other folks' culture and history and culture, etc., but Black people, you got to know us, right? Because we came here involuntarily, and we got nowhere to go, right? So this is all we know. So you have got to tell our story, right? Black people having the opportunity to learn this story, but non-Black people knowing the truth of who these Black children sitting in this classroom are, historically speaking, are culturally speaking. That story is non-negotiable. That's non-debatable. It has to be told in classrooms across America, and not only schools that are populated by Black children. I don't care if you're in the suburbs and it's all white children and there are no Black people. They need to know the story too. It just has to be told, because right now it's a mystery to so many people across the country as to who these Black people are, right? And the conclusions are usually somewhere in the area of entertainment and sports, and devoid of understanding struggle, but also science, technology, engineering, architecture, medicine, astronomy, and I can go on and on. It's just not at the fingertips of a lot of people, of most people in this country. That's a story that must be told. And what does it do for Black children? Oh man, it's the awakening that they've been waiting for. I call it the best kept secret in the world, is the knowledge of who Black people are historically.
And this is why the whitewashing persists in our schools, because people know that this is the best kept secret.
Yeah.
And once children know about the truth,
yep.
White think there's so much opposition against critical race theory and everything else. 1619 Project. I mean, we just heard, Sister Nicole Hannah-Jones still can get tenure from UNC.
Yeah.
And this is someone who has many publications and has done extensive research. She can't get tenure.
Can't get tenure.
Even OG Dr. Cornel West still fighting with Harvard to get tenure.
Yep.
So they know, these institutions know,
they know
that is the best kept secret.
Yep. They understand it. So want to keep that information suppressed and denied as long as they can.
Yes. And then going back to your story about your time as a teacher and a leader, is it a Jersey thing? Because I don't know about you, but I got Lean On Me vibes. I got Joe Clark vibes. You know what I mean? Like, it has to be a Jersey thing, right?
Yeah, they talk about Jersey strong, and Jersey's a different place. I've never been anywhere quite like it. It's a different kind of vibe here, and there's a lot of great people that come out of this small state, small but densely populated. But Joe Clark, and there are different perspectives on him. Everybody doesn't love everybody. There are people in Patterson where the school was, Patterson East Side, that have a different take. But I was able to take a little bit of Joe Clark and infuse it into me, not necessarily his style, but his passion for what he was doing, for the work, for the leadership. I was able to take that because I saw that movie when I was a rookie teacher. I was a brand new teacher or working toward becoming a teacher, whatever it was. I know I was green. And I saw something in him in terms of his drive that I said, I can borrow that. I can steal that and make that a part of who I am. So, we look at different people and we take a little bit from here, from him, and a little bit from her, and we develop our own style. but we learn from other people. I tell potential leaders or new and aspiring leaders all the time, study leaders. Don't just study education leaders, just study leaders. See what they do, see what they don't do, see what it is that you may be able to incorporate into your practice and see that which you'd never want to utilize and formulate who you're going to become as a leader.
Yeah, I just feel like there's just an offspring of Jersey leaders. So I just want to shout out, Principal Akbar Cook out at West Side, Brick City, Fatia Rahman, what she's doing, Jamar Mills. Like, there's so many.
You know all these folks. Okay.
I know a few of them. Like,
Jamal's my guy. Akbar's my guy. Yeah. Okay.
No, he's not. I've never met him personally, but he's definitely somebody who, like, I admire from afar just what he's been able to do, out in Newark. So yeah, shout out to him.
Yeah, I've been knowing Jamar for a while. He's now in Patterson doing things in the charter school space.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great people. People.
Yeah.
So I want to go ahead and just switch over to, and we talked about this earlier, the virtual assistant principal leadership academy. So you mentioned that the assistant principal position is in some cases more important than the principal position, because if you go to different schools, the assistant principal could be the instructional leader. They could be the disciplinary person. I think it's a more dynamic position. Whereas with the principal, it's like, no, you're the principal. You got to oversee everybody. Yeah. Like, there's really no differentiation with that.
Yeah.
So what I want to know is, what is it about the assistant principal position that allows you to have a strong affinity to it?
Yeah, it's something. I wrote a blog post about 2 or 3 years ago, and it was called The Assistant Principalship, the most misunderstood and underutilized position in all of education. And I've written about 50 or so articles and blog posts over the past 10 years. And that was the singular one that went viral. And I said, wow, this thing resonated with people, and I can see why. Let me turn this into a book. So I called my publisher and said, look, I need to make a book out of this, like, real quick, because people, this article got hot, and people were feeling that kind of content. So they said, yeah, let's do it. So went on and wrote it, became an overnight bestseller. In fact, it was called The Assistant Principal 50. It sold out the day it was released last year, May of 2020. So from there, I said, I want to create this academy online. I don't want to charge people. I just want to talk about assistant principalship. And we were in the throes of COVID stay-at-home orders anyway. So it just gave me something else to do while I'm stuck in the house on a Saturday. So went on and did that, and it just attracted just a lot of people, all over the world, not just America. And I wanted the whole intent was to say, we got to rethink this assistant principal. This person is making good money. This person is the number 2 person in the building. If there are several assistants, then they're all number 2 in the building. And we're using them to do the quote unquote dirty work. They're supervising cafeterias and doing bus duty and monitoring, maintaining inventories, to teacher supplies, and of course, discipline. I said, how could that be? I mean, you don't have to hire someone to be the number 2 in the building to do that level of work. You can hire somebody who that's what they specialize in. An assistant principal is the principal with the label assistant attached to it. So I need this person to assist the principal, assuming that the principal is truly an instructional person, an instructional leader. So now, if that person is truly an instructional leader, leading the instruction, I need the assistant to be a part of that. So I created the academy to, in large part, redefine the assistant principalship. So the blessing has been that school districts all over the country, in terms of superintendents, have purchased that book to use to reimagine, if you will, the assistant principalship, but also the virtual academy. So it was like, for example, last week, a superintendent from a district somewhere called me and wanted me to come in and do some PD. I said, okay, good, let's do it. And he said, by the way, I haven't missed any of this was when we were up to 54 weeks. He said, I haven't missed any of the 54 weeks, and neither has the administrative staff.
Wow.
Yeah, he said, my principals and the assistant principals watch it every week. He said, I just don't comment. So see, there's a lot of folks out there that I don't know who are watching. See, I know in terms of the people who make comments every week, because it's always the same people. So
sure,
you know, those are the ones who like, they with you through thick and thin, because they're making comments. It's the same names. I feel like I know them and I can't even see them. But then you got that other group out there that are in the cut, and you don't know who they are. And then he says to me, I'm superintendent of this district and I haven't missed you, and neither has the team. I said, wow, that's big. That's big. That means a whole year, because we talking beyond 52 weeks now. That means for a whole year, that superintendent and his team saw fit to watch it. Now, speaker colleagues will say something like this: Kafele, why are you giving all that free game? Look at all the money you're losing.
I was about to ask that.
Yeah, I said, no, I'm not. I say that's because you don't see the bigger picture, right? If I could speak through with my speaker hat on for a second, I say, I'm not giving free game at all, because there are two things happening here simultaneously. Number one, I never do assistant principal professional development. Here's why: because most schools don't want to allow the assistant principal to leave the building for PD. They send the principal and leave the AP in charge of the building. So that means I've got zillions of content for assistant principals for years that I've never used before, because at most I do about 200 presentations a year when I'm on site. Virtually, I do about 400, but it's very rare that I talk to assistant principals. I mean, maybe twice a year on a good year, right? So now I had all this content stored up. I said, I can't use it because nobody's calling me for it. So I'll put it on this academy. That's number one. But now in terms of the folks, man, you're giving free game. How you going to make money? Let me remind somebody that those assistant principals are going to be principals one day, and they're probably not going to forget who was training them every Saturday morning.
Come on now.
Bring in somebody to speak. You know what I'm saying? Well, now, that wasn't the motivation, but a funny thing happened, like as folks were getting these promotions to principalship as a result of watching the academy, but also watching my interview videos. Funny things started happening. Kafele, I'd like to bring you to the school. Let's do it. Right. So now sometimes you got to make an investment in order to get a return. Right. So a lot of folks, they missed it. You giving free game. You got too many videos on YouTube. No, I don't. Like, okay, this is going to date me just for a minute, but let me do this.
All right.
Luther Vandross. That was my guy. Luther. Okay. Right. Okay. So if Luther come to town, I'm there. Now I was much younger then. Michael Jackson. Right. That was my guy. Right. If Michael come to town or the Jack, I'm there. Right. So, but watch this. But I got all the Luther albums and CDs. Right. Okay. I got all the Michael Jackson CDs and albums and so forth. But guess what? It don't replace going to see him live. Right. So now, although I got the songs, I want to see him sing it in person. Right. So now you got folks out there. Yeah, I got all the Kafele videos and podcasts and so forth. But I want to hear them in person. I want to hear that fire, like right there in the same room. So they still gonna bring me out. So I don't worry about that kind of stuff.
Come on, talk that talk, OG. Talk that talk, man. That's what exactly. I think in the end, just giving your career, like you don't really need the money like that. Like, I mean, you done got all your children through college. Yeah, I seen the post.
Yeah,
I appreciate no more tuition.
I appreciate that. You know what? God has been good, and you know, I tell you one of my colleagues, and I tell my other speaker colleagues, I say, look, man, you do this thing right. You can live your best life, as they say. You know, if I get on social media and I react to something in the world and I put something on that sabotages my career, you know something, financially, I'm gonna be fine, right? Because I haven't spent my money, right? I've invested it so that as I'm speaking to you, it's at work.
Yes.
Right. So I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. So I can be me. Back when they were going to run me out of town as a principal at that year that I referred to before, I was going to be fine. And that's why I could stand there in the board president and say, you're not speaking as one who's fighting for your job. I'm not, because I'm going to be fine if you fire me. So that's you got to have plans. So folks out here watching that decide that you want to be your authentic self, and that may mean going against the grain, then make sure you got plan B and C and D and E lined up too. So that in you trying to be yourself, if something backfires, you got other options. We got to have multiple options in our lives. We can't have just everything in one basket. And see, for me, my other options are still in the education space. It's not like, okay, they ran me out of town, let me go open up a franchise. I'll just do education in a different genre, but I'll still be doing it. And that's how you got to plan that thing.
Wow. And I have to say this too, because this goes back to a few years ago, and this was one of the Black Educator Rock conferences, and we had, all the brothers together, and you and Odie's were just giving us game. And I think I asked you a question to the effect of, well, how come there's so many like Black candidates for assistant principal positions who are just kind of stuck in that space and they can't advance into that space? And you told me, like, basically, we can't go that straight route. Sometimes you have to do a detour, to get to that same destination. And I took that to heart, man. I really took it and ran with it. And that was one of the things that just told me I need to do something different, because staying in the K-12 system, as much as I love the classroom, at the end is about systemic change. It's about doing something different and really speaking the truth. So, of course, that's what inspired me to just say, all right, I'm gonna write these books. I'm gonna start this podcast. I'm gonna do these things. And it's because of just, OGs like yourself and then others, whether it's Dr. Chika Akua and just so many others who just poured into us that day. So I just want to just share that, just say I appreciate it, and it really resonated with me.
Appreciate you. That was a great day. I can't wait till we can get back to it. Hopefully by next summer, we can get back and resume where we left off.
Absolutely. That was just powerful. But before we get to lightning round, we have to talk about the new edition, the 12th book, which is going to come out in a few days. Yeah. And by the time this releases, it'll be out by now. So the Equity and Social Justice Education 50.
Yeah.
You'd say you are on record saying that this is the most important book you've ever written.
Yeah.
So I want you to expound upon that and tell me, what inspired you to write this book at this time? And what are some of the lessons that you hope that people can take out of this book?
I wrote this book fast too. I guess I write them all fast. Most of the books I wrote, I hold myself up in a hotel room and wrote them in a week. Because all I did was write. I hardly slept. I hardly ate. I just sit up in a hotel room and just write around the clock. So I can bang out about 50,000 words in writing for about 7 days, right? So but lately I don't do 50,000 word books. I do 25,000 word books because folks are so busy, and I want them to be able to read the book and then make reference to it. So this one was a 25,000 book, which is comparable to about a little over 100 pages. So here's the thing. I had no intention on writing a book this year. I've been writing a book every year for the past about 4 or 5 years. So I said, I don't need to write a book. I got all these new books that I need to continue to be on top of. But then we were introduced to George Floyd, 9 minutes and 29 seconds, murdered by a Minneapolis police officer. So, and then soon after, we were introduced to Breonna Taylor, who had already been murdered by a police officer. So at that point, as the people were in the streets, and white America's educators, many of them were writing me, asking me what should they read in order to understand the aftermath of these murders, in terms of the outrage that was being expressed. And I'm telling them to read the books I showed you now, Before the Mayflower and others. But then I said, I need to write. I know what I want to tell them, the books, but also the practices in the classroom. I said, I'm going to write this book. Called the publisher. I said, I got to write this like right now. They said, go ahead, write it. So I went on and wrote it. I think it took me all of 2 weeks, and went on and, they edited, and then finally, went on to print, and here it is. But here's the thing. I only wrote this book because I felt compelled to write it, because the book is addressing equity and social justice. The real motivation was the second half of the book, the social justice education, because there's so many, we hear of it, but you start asking people, well, what does that mean? And you get, if you ask 1,000 different people, you probably get 1,000 different responses. So because I prided myself on being a social justice educator for all the years I was in education, I said, I have a handle on this. Let me provide definition. Let me provide framework. Let me provide information on how we make this a part of the classroom. Because here I'm saying that it's not uncommon to hear teachers say, we are preparing children for the real world. We hear that. We're getting ready. We're getting children ready for life later on. All that kind of stuff. Life after school, whatever it is, their future. But when I hear that real world talk, I say, wait a minute. The world that they come from before they walk into the building, and the world that they're in once they're in the building, they're both their world. One of them's not real and the other one's fictitious. They're both real. So there's no line of demarcation that can be drawn between the world outside and the world inside, because when they walk in the classroom, they're bringing that world with them because they're a product of it. It created them. It fashioned them. So I'm saying, therefore, that world has to be understood, but that world also has to be given a platform to be expressed. So hence, social justice education is a student-centered exploration, examination, and assessment of the world upon which the student exists through his or her own lens. Right? It's not about the teacher, because when it becomes about the teacher, it's teacher-driven indoctrination as opposed to student-centered social justice education. So I'm saying here that I want to introduce that to teacher, but I want to, but within the same book, we're talking about, what does the teacher know? What is the teacher's comfort level and familiarity with the social justice, racial justice issues that permeate the environment that the children come from, permeate and pervade the environment that the children reside in. So we talk about how to enhance that knowledge base, how to become much more knowledgeable, how to engage in those conversations, large scale and small group conversations among staff, that they become familiar with the issues of the community, etc. So between that and then the equity side, and when I talk equity, finally with this book, it gives me a platform to say, as far as I'm concerned, as it relates to equity, there are these three core pillars, three core themes, and everything evolves out of it: student individuality, student cultural identity, and student voice, the ability to express oneself in one's classroom, but simultaneously the vehicle to find oneself in one's classroom, because it's not uncommon for a youngster to graduate from high school excited about graduation on graduation day. And let's say graduation day is on May 22nd, and then on May 23rd, I don't know what to do, because I never found my voice. I don't know who this is inside of me. So I was looking forward to the graduation and getting up out of here, but now I don't know what to do. I can be on the college campus and not having found my voice. And then my college tenure is very short. because I didn't know who I was and therefore didn't have a purpose for being on campus in the first place. So I'm saying in the equity space, youngsters have to be in a classroom with a teacher with an equity mindset that with all the tenets and facets of equity, one of them is to help youngster to discover who youngster is in terms of his or her own greatness moving forward.
Whew. And I cannot wait for this book to come to Ethiopia. It should be coming in the next few days.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I cannot wait to get my hands on it.
Appreciate that.
Yes. But man, whew. So we are at the hour. So I want to go ahead into lightning round to close out. Just a few quick hitter questions. So this is the first question I ask everybody, especially during this pandemic. What is your go-to self-care activity?
Yeah, these days, since my heart attack of 6 years ago, my go-to self-care activity is the cardio work. Just keeping me right so I could live. I do not like exercising at all, but what gets me to get up and do it, I do it 6 days a week. I usually take Saturday off, so I'll be back in the gym tomorrow. But all I have to do is remind myself, you had a heart attack, buddy, right? Your life has to shift. So I do my 2 or 3 miles every day, and that's the motivation. And once I'm in the gym or even outside, I'm good once I get started. But it's a real drag to prepare to do it until I come back to grips. You were laying on a stage on your back in the midst of a heart attack after doing a keynote address. So let's put them sneakers on and get to the gym.
Wow, I know that's a harsh reminder.
Yeah,
that's what motivates you to keep on going and to keep the momentum going. So I get it.
You see, I would think that most heart attack sufferers, I know I do. I guess I'm speaking for myself, but I would think that most of us, you wake up every morning with the same thought, like, am I going to complete the day? Because see, because you were faced with death. So now it's like, damn, will this thing come again?
Yes.
Right. So you got to do everything you can do to make sure that it doesn't. Right. So every day of my life, I have that reminder now. And it's interesting. I watch a lot of basketball. So I'm looking at these rookies, right? Or last night I'm looking at the Memphis Golden State game.
Yep.
And I'm looking at Ja, right? And I'm saying, man, Ja Morant, he's 21 years old. If he has a 20-year career, will I still be alive when he retires? Because in 20 years, I'll be 80, right? So will I be alive when he retires? That's the way I think now after this heart attack. So on the one hand, the health, but on the one hand, just the life expectancy of a Black man. So therefore, I want to be able to say, yeah, I'm gonna see this kid retire in 20 years. So let me make sure that I'm eating right, I'm exercising right, I'm living right, I'm thinking right, because stress and all that. Let me make sure I'm taking care of me so that I can live a long life. My mother's 86, and I want to be able to live as long as her and beyond.
Right. And you were just talking about basketball. So let's talk about basketball for a second. I got a couple questions.
Yeah.
So, being a Jersey native, I'm pretty sure during those ABA days, you were able to watch Dr. J when the Nets were still in town.
I did when I was very young.
Right. And then, of course, they went to the NBA, and now they're the Brooklyn Nets. So do you still claim Brooklyn Nets, even though their origins are from Jersey?
I became a season ticket holder of the New Jersey Nets, partial season. And I was at a lot of games during the early 2000s. But when they made the decision to go to Brooklyn, I canceled my subscription. So because it was, it's disloyal, so I gravitated to the Lakers. But I learned later, I didn't realize it, but I didn't gravitate to the Lakers. I gravitated to Kobe, right? So as soon as Kobe retired and people were excited about Bron going to LA, I said, don't come to me with that, because I'm not excited about that. I didn't realize it until he left. I was only latched on to them because of Kobe. And when Kobe left them, I came back home to the Knicks. So people see me wearing a Knick hat and think I jumped on the bandwagon. I said, I got that hat before they started winning. I came back home, which is my origin. I became a Nets fan as an adult, but I grew up as a Knicks fan. So I came back home. Now, are they gonna win the title? No, not this year. They don't have enough. They don't have enough. I'm hanging in there with the Lakers right now. If Bron and AD stay healthy, then they will win the ring. They will win the chip this year.
Yeah, and I mean the fact that they had
that's a big if.
Yeah, it's a big if given their health and the fact that they had to go through a whole play-in tournament. So I don't know about this year, but Phoenix is looking good.
Yeah.
I like Chris Paul and Devin Booker. I mean, that whole team's been solid all year long. So, we'll see how that series goes.
Yeah.
But who do you have? So you have the Lakers win the title? Is that what I'm hearing?
I got them winning.
Well, who's your MVP for this year?
That's a good question because it kept wavering. When Harden was playing, he got himself into the conversation. Steph has been shooting lights out. Bron was up there at the time. It's a toss up right now. I guess if I was voting, I would go with Steph Curry. But Embiid was looking good for a while, but then he got injured, and Giannis is I don't see all his games, but they're saying he's not playing up to the level that he did in the past, at least last year. So Steph just came on with a vengeance in the second half, and I'd probably have to go with him.
Yeah, he'll be my pick too. But given what you said about Embiid missing some games and the fact that Nikola Jokic, who's the other candidate from Denver, he played every game this season.
Yeah,
and Denver's had a pretty good year.
Yeah, you're right. Can't forget him. He may be the one.
I think it'll probably go to him, but my choice is Steph, just given the fact that he carried the team, no Klay Thompson, all these young guys, COVID protocols, injuries, and they were able to get into the play-in tournament.
Yeah.
And he's getting triple and quadruple teamed every night.
Every night. I mean, Joker is good, but is great. But Steph was incredible. Just incredible numbers.
So I hope they give him the Russell Westbrook treatment. Just look at the historical way in which he dominated and just say, you know what? I know the record wasn't like up to where the other teams were, but just how he went about leading the league in scoring at 33 years old, given his injury history, given what he lost. I mean, how can you deny him that honor? That's just me.
I agree, though. I agree.
Yeah. All right. So if you're at a dinner table and you can invite 3 influential figures, dead or alive, who would they be?
Yeah, that one is pretty easy for me. Malcolm, Dr. King. But then I'm a swerve out of the civil rights, human rights struggle, and I'm gonna go to someone I just referenced before. It's a toss up between Luther and Michael, right? It's and when I say Michael Jackson, it's a toss up. It's one of those two, and since you want me to go with 3, I think I'm gonna go with Mike. Yeah, so that's a real departure from Malcolm and Dr. King, but I grew up on them, so.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of things I'd like to ask him.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then finally, who would you like to see as a guest on this podcast?
Yeah, it's a lot of folks. Have you had Dr. Marcus Jackson on yet?
No, I have not had Dr. Marcus Jackson on. No, sir.
I mean, all them folks in that Black Educators Rock Circle, Salome, Thomas L., Eric Cork, Melina, Valentine, it's a lot of them, I'd like to hear them all on there. Sean Hurt. Yeah. And I'm sure they all wait.
Hey, listen, I got a long list, so I'm trying to get them all on.
Yeah.
Trying to get them all on, but definitely great choices.
Yeah, Craig Boykin and Robert Jackson. I can't forget them. Tommy,
too many.
Yeah, too many.
Too many. There's just way too many, man. But Principal Kafele, man, thank you so much for this time. I know you've had a tight schedule with everything, so the time that you're sharing with us is greatly appreciated. And yeah, I just look forward to just seeing how you continue to evolve. I mean, I can't believe I'm saying that, 30 plus years in the game, you still evolving. So
I appreciate
I'm looking forward to seeing how that continues.
Yeah, you too. Likewise. Absolutely.
And then real quickly, how can people who don't know about you, which I don't think is a surprise, but there's some who don't know, right? How can they follow you on social media to just support what you're doing?
Yeah, just go to principalkafele.com. One word, principalkafele.com, Kafele, and everything is there. And as I tell people all the time, it's not just a marketing website. It's a university of professional learning. I got so many videos and podcasts and articles and blog posts. It's just a lot there. You just navigate the site and everything is, everything is right there. You don't have to pay for it. The only thing you have to pay for is the books. So just go to the site and check out everything. And you'll see that there's a lot there. So principalkafele.com, on Twitter, Principal Kafele, one word, and at Principal Kafele, I should say. It's Facebook, Principal Kafele, although you got to follow me on there. And then YouTube, there's several channels, but my main three are the Virtual AP Leadership Academy, the Principal Kafele Speaks to Educators, and one called Principal Kafele, but it's really called Message to Your Son. But I put it in as my main channel, so Principal Kafele. And those are videos for the young men. About 200 some odd videos there, just talking about how to get from point A to point B in life. So whatever scenario you could think of, I probably covered it.
Wow. That in itself is a whole library. You don't have to go nowhere else.
Yeah, it's a lot there.
Just go to the website.
That's it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the living legend, the OG, Principal Baruti Kafele. Thank you so much, sir. And I wish you and your family well.
You as well. Be well, stay safe, and we'll see you at some point.
Yes, sir. All right. Take care.
All right.
All right, y'all. So this is the end of another fantastic episode of our AntiBlackness Educators Live. And I know y'all had to learn a lot from this episode. Y'all had to have learned a lot. This was just such a powerful episode. I'm just totally speechless, but you already know how it is. Until next time, everybody, I wish you all good morning, good night, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. We're going to do this again another time. Peace out, everybody.